My name is Franco Ramirez. This is Management 16 Personal Ethics at Work, and this is the final project, Another Ethical Dilemma. In this project, I am going to talk about an interview that I had with someone about an ethical dilemma they faced in their past, and I'm going to introduce them to and discuss the 8-step model of ethical decision making with them to decide whether they would have done things differently had they had that model at the time. Cool. So who I'm interviewed, excuse me, for this project was my mom because I love her and she's very lovely and very sweet. But on top of that, because she has faced a lot of ethical dilemmas in her life. One of the biggest ones being the one that we discussed. So, essentially, in simple terms, um, my mom was going to college, sophomore year, halfway through it, my dad has a stroke and he falls into a coma. So my mom has to decide between continuing her education and securing a job in case my dad doesn't wake up from a coma so she can provide for the family, or dropping everything and following like the societal and gender norms expected of her and devote all of her time and energy into taking care of my dad. Keep in mind, when I say like societal and gender norms, I mean like traditional Mexican ones because this is happening in Mexico at the time. Um, and yeah, that's essentially the basis of the dilemma. So, introducing her into the 8-step model, we started building up of this dilemma. So, the first step of the model is gathering facts. It doesn't get much simpler than that. We talked about it. We talked about how things got to that point, like what things were going on before that. So we discussed how my dad's family has very traditional Mexican like views on everything, really, but on like specifically on like societal and like gender norms. And they're really big on like, okay, no, like if you're someone's wife, like you need to devote yourself fully to them no matter what. So there's that. We also discussed the fact that my dad was the only like provider for the family financially, and that if he didn't recover and my mom didn't have a job, then we were screwed, essentially, me and my brother and her. We also discussed the fact that my dad had a previous history of health issues, so it wasn't like an isolated case. And on top of that, when she talked to the doctors following this incident, they told her that he didn't have like the best outlook. So she definitely took this into consideration when making her decision. By the way, well, we'll talk about that next. So defining the ethical issue, what we just did. So she had to decide between like going against societal norms and what was expected of her and continuing her education for the sake of her family and her financial situation, or put that on hold, like her financial and like family security, and focus all of her energy and time into taking care of my dad because that's what like society dictated for her to do, and like as well as her in-laws. In the end, she decided to keep her education because she realized like, oh hey, like we're gonna be screwed if he doesn't wake up and we have to make meets end by ourselves if we don't have someone with like a degree or like a good income. But that all happened before we introduced her to the wonderful 8-step model. So we're going to talk about how that might or might not have influenced her decisions. But before that, we need to identify the stakeholders for the solution, which we did. So basically, my dad's family, which is extensive, is like I think like 12 people living in the house, or at the time it was like 12 people living in the house, between like cousins, family, like direct family, and all that. Then it's my mother, obviously, because her husband's dying and it's her education. So like any of the impact she had, any of the decisions she make directly impact her. And then we just decided on myself and my brother because we're their kids, so we're also part of the family, and same as her, any decision she makes directly affects us. So both financially and like well, mostly financially. Yeah. Step 4, 5, and 6 all tackle the simple models of like ethical decision making. With the first model being the consequences model, which essentially looks at things from like a utilitarian point of view, as in which consequences make the better good for like the most people. So in this model, we decided, okay, just statistically, since my dad's family is a lot bigger and they're expecting her to like follow societal norms, she would have to, so that way like they benefit from it, or they benefit from her decision. So even though it might put us like a disadvantage, it makes the most people happy. So there's that. For the second model, which is the obligations and like morals and principles, what we look at here is whether her decision, if everyone did the same decision she made, whether that would be fine with her, like whether that would be all right in the world. And we discuss this a lot because we both have very I guess conventionally selfish views, not in the sense of like, oh yeah, like I want everything for myself, but more in the sense of I need to take care of myself first before I can take care of others. So we came to realize this, but then I discussed with her, oh hey, yeah, like that's, you can apply our own thinking to it. So we came to the decision that yeah, like if everyone just ditched like their loved one when it came to like medical adversities, and like continue their life, it might cause them trouble, and it might like deteriorate a lot of like inter-family relationships. So that's not good. So we decided, okay, for the better of like society and like following what, and like seeing how everyone would follow this, we're going to decide that you stick with taking care of my dad. And finally, for the character and integrity model, which is step 6, this follows what like any good moral character would do in the situation and how they would act, like according to their role. So what me and my mom discuss is that we believe that any good mother, any morally sound mother, would take their children's like future into consideration, make that a priority over like their in-laws, like in their comfort or whatever. So we decided that yeah, like a good like moral character mother would, prioritize her kids and like their well-being. So in this model, she did choose, or we came to the conclusion that she would continue her education. Step 7 is about thinking basically outside of the box and seeing like what creative solutions we can make to the problem. But after discussing it for a while, we really couldn't come up with anything because we weren't in the financial situation where we could be like, oh yeah, let's hire a nanny, or like let's hire like medical professionals. We did at the start, it didn't work out and it was too costly. So we really only had those two options of, okay, continue your education or devote your time fully to that. And I mean, the alternative, which in the end we did end up doing, was like having my in-laws my mom's in-laws take care of my dad, but they did it very begrudgingly, and like with a lot of animosity towards my mom. But yeah, and then the final step is checking your gut, which is what she did. We discussed this, and yeah, like my mom told me in her heart she knew that my dad probably wasn't going to make it, so she decided to follow her instinct and secure her financial prospects. I mean, it doesn't get much harder than that. It might be tough, but she realized like what it was gonna take to move forward from that. So yeah. So in the end, we decided the rational 8-step model wouldn't really change her outlook, but it definitely would have helped her like organize her thoughts. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you for your time, and have a good spring quarter and fun grading this. Please give me a good grade because I need a good grade. Like I'm like a 90. Please. Thank you.